And welcome back. And just waiting to be connected with our guest this morning, just having a few technical problems, but he'll be joining us shortly. And we'll be talking about Black consciousness. And today, of course, marking a very important anniversary in this regard. And we are in conversation this morning with the Azanian People's Organizations, that AZAPO. And yesterday they held a rally in Ginsberg near Qonce in the Eastern Cape as part of a series of activities to mark the 45th anniversary of the death of Steven Bantu Biko. Now, Biko was the founding leader of the Black consciousness movement in our country, and he died in police custody at the hands of the apartheid police on the 12th of September 1977. He was detained after being arrested at a roadblock in Makhanda on the 18th of August 1977, and he never was seen alive again. A security police officer later testified that Steven Biko was transported for 12 hours from his Port Elizabeth prison cell, naked and unconscious, to a Pretoria hospital the day before he died. AZAPO President Nelvis Qekema joins us now for a further discussion on this particular matter. Mr. Qekema, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Morning, and the viewers, Qekema.
So let's start with the significance of this day. What does it actually stand for? Not just as a day or date marked on a calendar, but what should it mean more significantly for South Africa and South Africans as a nation?
Biko himself says, a nation that forgets its martyrs will itself be forgotten. So it becomes important that we remember this day. The reason why we remember this day, we are helping us to connect with time. We are helping ourselves to connect with where we are coming from. The atrocities, the dehumanization of our people, our landlessness, the manner in which we were enslaved, the manner in which we were oppressed and treated worse than animals. And that helps us to be able to say, in this democracy, we should never go back there. But also, it does help to be able to remember that on this day, we are in democracy because somebody died, because somebody was starved of life, somebody was starved of humanity, of dignity, stripped of their dignity. So therefore, whatever we do, those of us who are now privileged, who are still alive, must remember that somebody lost his blood, somebody lost his life. So whatever we do, we should be able to make it a point that the ideals for which those who died are being realized.
So let's speak to that, Mr. Qekema. Now, last year after you were elected, you actually conceded that as a proponent of Black consciousness, AZAPO has basically failed in advancing the ideals of Biko. Let's talk about that and why that has been the case.
Well, we were taking responsibility as AZAPO that if in this country, 28 years after democracy, 45 years after Biko's death, that 50 million of the people who are unemployed in this country remain black and pure black, then it means we have failed. We have not done and pushed enough to ensure that doesn't happen. If an upward of 53 million people are black and purely black, it means we have not done our work. If our people, more than 2 million, are still living in shacks in this country, so dehumanized, and the dehumanization project right into the heart of democracy, it then means we have not done our work. If 3,297 schools and black schools are still using pit latrines in this country, and 2,000 of those are in the Eastern Cape, end. 2 children, 5-year-olds, Michael Komate and Lumka, died and having fallen in those toilets. It then means that dehumanization continues beyond and into democracy. And therefore, AZAPO needs to do something because we must take responsibility for that deficiency and for that failure.
So what exactly does AZAPO plan on doing?
Well, first of all, is to be able to do what we continued doing and what Steve Biko died doing, which is to conscientize the people, make them aware of the power they wield as a people, as a power they wield united, the peoples of the organization of the power they wield united, not just inside Parliament, but outside Parliament. And also the principle and the concept of self-reliance, where sometimes we do not wait on the state to do something, even though we have to push the state because we are taxpayers, but we've got to be self-reliant, the principle of self-determination, and that happens if our organizations are united. At the moment, people are making a mistake. For the citizens, that is, folding arms and waiting for one day that the state will come, self-service delivery will come. If it doesn't come, they forget. If it comes on the eve of elections, then they vote for that person. We just gave them some crumbs. But we're saying, let's come together before and beyond elections and work as a unit. And that mass line, people united, can make things happen.
Mr. Qekema, now for the most part, the challenges of black people today are as real as they were during the times of Biko, of Sobukwe. And if we look at what's happening at the moment and how, for example, AZAPO has been by and large rejected at the polls, do you think that is as a result of the party being ineffective in advancing those black consciousness ideals, or is that as a result of perhaps just people in general, black people in general, not really latching on to the ideals and principles of black consciousness? Which is it?
I wouldn't say the people have rejected AZAPO at the polls, but I would say AZAPO did not go to the polls. And when people were looking for AZAPO at the polls, they didn't find AZAPO. Now, that is a function of resources or lack of resources, because in electoral politics, you are as good as the resources you have, which is why sometimes you will see even parties that are almost not known, never been anywhere, but because they have the resources and the money talks. That's why these days you find even crooks can just, thugs can just stand up and then have political parties. If they have the money, if they have the resources, money talks. So even we as AZAPO, we are beginning to reconcile with the fact that without the resources, we're not going to make it happen. And then we need to find those resources. We're not going to complain. Crowd resources and everything. We need to make it happen.
So if we look around, and it seems as though struggle movements in the main are having a diminished role in today's society, and some can be said to be particularly, marginalized, pushed to the edges of society by the electorate. And if you look at those organizations, and if you look at AZAPO in particular, when you do some reflection, what do you attribute this to? You said that you were not rejected at the polls because you could not be found on the ballot because of a lack of resources. They could not find you. But again, is that a matter of, being able to advertise yourself ahead of an election, or is it work that needs to be done on an ongoing basis that speaks to the hearts and minds of people?
As AZAPO, we take responsibility for some of our failures, and many of those We understand it's very difficult to enter the system because the system makes it difficult for you if you're outside. The 600,000 rand that you need to be able to put there as a deposit, you've not even started doing anything. The quotas in terms of time that you get from the SABC and all the other parties, smaller money or new entrants like us, make it very difficult to penetrate the system. But that aside, because you can't complain about that, that's what it is. You must play in accordance with the rules that are laid down. So, but we are saying at AZAPO, the problem in AZAPO has been we ourselves, because our members and our supporters find it difficult to play the game, because in 1994 we boycotted the field, and once we did that, we found that when we came back, our members were still in denial that this is what it is. We've got to learn the game, the rules of the game. We need to know the tactics and strategies of the game. We must not complain that it should have been like that. So let's play in the game. And as things stand, we have not been doing very well to say we're in electoral politics as members of AZAPO, and we master the game. We must accept this is where we are. We must shine in this game.
I would take that argument further, Mr. Qekema, and say it's not just at the ballot box. I think you are not doing very well generally in basically espousing the ideals of black consciousness, because you decry the fact that perhaps you don't get given a platform as often as perhaps you would like. So here's a platform. Speaking to the millions of viewers that are watching right now, talk to us about black consciousness. What does it mean? What are the ideals? What is it that people ought to latch onto if you were to put the message out there?
Well, one of the basic tenets of black consciousness, we start with the fact that without land, we are nowhere. Because we are connected to the land, not just connected to the land, but we are the land as the indigenous people of this country. As things stand, an upward of 77% of the land and farms, and is in the hands of white people. We are nowhere to be found, right beyond or into 28 years. The wealth of this country, that which makes us to be human. More than 80% is owned by 10% of the population, and we are therefore saying, when we keep saying our economy, it is not our economy, particularly as black people, because we own no wealth and there is no income, and then we are saying these are the kind of things we need to change. These are the kind of things we need to turn around, and we can only do that when we organize. We can only do this when we come together. We can only do that when we say, as black people, we are not going to celebrate that they are saying to us that from 1994 we are now free to get into the same toilets with white people. But what we are going to question is whether have we eaten to be able to get into the toilets. What have we eaten, if anything? So these are the things that we are saying. We must understand we are not visitors in this country. This is our country. And we need to knock at the door of those who have voted for. And if they are not doing that which we say they should do, we take them out. We put in the people who are going to do what we should do. We are putting in people who are going to help us restore our humanity and dignity as black people in this country. We are not passing by. We are not visitors. This is our country. And we cannot be living in shacks and townships, and we accept that's what it is. We cannot be living and then exclusively, be given RDPs, and then we accept that's what it is for us. Poverty and the face of poverty cannot continue to be to be black. Why it is that in this country we accept that we shall never have water, we shall never have electricity, because even that load shedding, there are reports that indicate that load shedding is racist in itself, because the people who are most hit hard by load shedding are black people and poor people. So these are things we need to be addressing.
Now, what about justice for the Biko family? Like so many other families who had lost their loved ones who were killed at the hands of the apartheid police, there has been no justice for the Biko family. Where do you come in as AZAPO in trying to assist in that regard?
Well, indeed, there has been no justice, and nobody has gone to jail for having killed Steve Biko. Nobody has gone to jail for having killed Unkgopotse Tiro. And in fact, some of the people have been rewarded by democracy for having killed our leaders. And as we stand now, and we think the best justice that can happen for the Biko family, it's not for them and for themselves only and exclusively, because Biko did not die for them. They may have, brought them into this world, but Biko belongs to the Azanians. Biko belongs to the South African people. And in that sense, once you start addressing the plight of the black people in particular, you are now giving justice to Steve Biko. So therefore, what we need to be doing now is to ensure that Steve Biko and his legacy is not erased. His contributions and his sacrifice is not erased. That's why on the 18th of August, we staged a silent protest in Makhanda, and we were saying Steve Biko was arrested here in Makhanda at this spot, and this spot is the genesis of the martyrdom, and therefore this street must be renamed after Steve Biko, and at this point there must be a monument, and there's just up there about 50 meters, you have the only thing that we know Makhanda for, which is the 1820 settlers. And we are saying, no, we need to have here a monument that counters that one, that challenges that one, and tell us that here at this point, this was the beginning of martyrdom. So that is the best you can do for Steve Biko, is if you feed his flock, if you feed his people, if you rehumanize his people, if you restore the dignity and then humanity of these people. You have done it, but these people must be in charge. And for them to be in charge, you need citizen activism. It is not for them to sit there and hope that they will be helped out of their poverty. You must understand that for politicians, the poverty of the majority is very important. It is important. It has to be perpetuated. Why? Because they rely on that poverty and on that desperation and on that illiteracy for them to be returned to power come elections time, because those people are desperate. That's the problem, and we need to change that.
And just in closing, Mr. Qekema, because, it's kind of interesting just, trying to locate where AZAPO is, because, as you say, we are today commemorating the 45th anniversary of the death of Biko. We've been in a democratic dispensation in South Africa for 28 years, almost 3 decades now, and you're still talking about what should be there, what we ought to do. Why are we not doing it? How are you going to convince young people who do not have the benefit of Black history, for example, about the outstanding role and contribution played by those who devoted their lives for the freedom of Black people, people such as Steven Bantu Biko? How do you make history come alive for them, not only by invoking sentiment and thought, but to actually link it to what it is that you are doing in advancing Biko's legacy?
Well, the wheels are turning, because you cannot fool all the people all the time. In much of time, people are beginning to realize what needs to be done. And that's the reason why you found students, without relying on anybody else, the Fees Must Fall movement, were able to say, look, you said to us, the doors of learning shall be opened. and yet those doors of learning are still closed. And all that is being opened now is for you to be able to dip your fingers in the resources of this country, into the stealing the taxpayers' money. Yet the students are rising on their own. You see now what is happening. We were told that, look, we are now giving you a leader that is educated as a country, a leader that is a billionaire in the country, so this one can steal. Probably that one stole because he was uneducated and poor. Yet what is happening? Look what is we are discovering in the farms. And the people are now angry and saying, look, this is not what we died for. Now we need to come together and, as Steve Biko said, give a human face to South Africa, and that is the glittering prize for which Steve Biko died. And at this moment in time, we do not see that glittering prize because we've alienated our power as a people. We keep on sitting there folding arms and hoping somebody will do it for us. We need to stand up and do it for ourselves. If he doesn't do it, we take him out and we put in there somebody who will do that which we say he must do. That is the power we wield as a people, and that power is not only at the ballot box, but that power is also on the streets. When we march on the streets, when we hit the road and say we've had enough, we're taking it no more. When we are saying that we understand for a democracy to work and optimally, we've got to understand there must be no organization that must be assured of victory. Two-thirds majority. No, not at all. Every organization that is in power must always worry that come next elections, we might lose. When that happens, it means that people are in power.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time this morning. AZAPO President Nelvis Qekema talking to us about the 45th anniversary after the brutal murder of Steven Bantu Biko by state police. Biko was the leader of the Black Consciousness movement and died in police custody on this day in 1977.